joined here by three people that I love, gentlemen that I love, former Seahawks that I love, all together good people. Doug Baldwin, Cliff Averill, and Mike Bennett. Welcome, y'all.
What's happening? What's going on, man?
First, let's set the table right, because Doug just gave me a nervous energy, and let's go. This is like we in Mo Kelly's office, all right? Have that. That's the type of setting.
You don't want that.
That's what the people want.
Mo Kelly office get you canceled.
Nowadays, Mo Kelly office definitely gets you canceled.
Mo Kelly office, we be all on TV. People be canceled us.
Oh my gosh!
Kids can't go to school.
Did you hear that?
Wives can't go to the clubs and everything. People be like, ain't serving Mr. Bennett. We heard your husband on the radio.
All right, real quick, you guys here pretty soon. You guys are going back to the stadium. Not in your Seahawks uniform, but in more of a philanthropic type of way. Mm-hmm. Champions of Change. You guys are an organization that will hold a series of fundraising events designed to raise money for local grassroots nonprofits, some of which you worked with while you were playing. Talk about what's going to be happening and talk about Champions of Change, Doug, starting off with you.
Yeah, I guess from the ground floor, the Champions of Change is basically just the idea of us coming together as a trio, but also kind of leading the way for other athletes and other players that we have, that we were on the same team with, but also just from other sports teams in the area as well, galvanizing our efforts in the community, right? Like we understand kind of from a different angle, a different level, right, of interaction and engagement with the community from a philanthropic standpoint. And so now being able to utilize our influence and our leverage in some ways, so to speak, to point that effort in the direction of some of these organizations that have been doing the groundwork, that have tons of data around the impact that they have made, and being able to help them scale, right? And so, the plan is to every year have a different theme, and a different set of organizations that we support, so that we are, tackling some of the problems in our region in a holistic approach, and being able to look at different organizations that are tackling problems from different angles. So that's, I guess that's kind of the framework of what we're doing. There's obviously a lot of soul, really. That's mostly that's really important to why we came together and what we're trying to accomplish. But Mike B and Cliff can speak to that too.
But yeah, and I also think one of the reasons why we think we felt like it made sense, and it shows how unique I think our team was. You know what I mean? Because I say this all the time and a lot of guys in our locker room at that time didn't understand it, but what we had wasn't normal in a sense of it's just like corporate America. Like typically you go to work, you do your job, and you go home. Like there's no real friendship per se in the NFL like that with most guys. It's 53 guys on the roster, you know what I mean?
Right.
But like for us, it was a lot different because we genuinely liked each other. Kid's birthday party, all 53 guys might actually show up. You know what I'm saying? Foundation event, you've hosted some of my events. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of guys come out and support, and that's not a normal thing. So us doing this for us isn't necessarily a shock per se, but like it's not the norm. And for us to come together collectively after being retired, after having some success on the football field, but to come together to give back to the same community that we played in front of, to the same community that we're very much involved in. Doug and I still live here. Like we made this home. So us coming together is more in line with us wanting to continue to keep giving back and understanding that we can make a bigger impact if we came together instead of doing our own individual things.
I think nobody will disagree with the era, and now that's what I like to call it, the era that you guys were in part of, and we'll talk more about that here later on. But you guys that era was special. The connection that the city of Seattle, the 12s, the Seahawks fans have had with you guys as well has been a real deep connection. So, Mike B., you're there in Hawaii right now. When did you know that this connection, that it was special? Like Cliff talks about the birthday parties and liking each other's and being friends. When did you realize it was special?
I think after the first time me and Cliff almost got in the fight on the sideline, and then afterwards it was like, hey, man, I told Cliff, I was like, yeah, now my wife not going to be able to call your wife. I already told her not to call Tia no more. You can't hang out. But I knew it was like that was the time. That was the moment when you had this, this heated experience, and and we came out and we became friends even more, because I feel like a lot of times the greatest things are forged in fire, you know. And so it's like for us, our relationships were forged through a lot of adversity, and I think that's what brought us closer. Because in a sense, like nobody believed that, you know, that we would come in and accomplish all the things that we did, and also at the same time, simultaneously, you know, impact the city. I think that was the moment that I realized that it was just like a genuine connection. You know, the first time I met Marshawn, and then like just hanging out, like there was just like the genuine thing that felt beyond football, like the D-line room. Like we were just in there hanging out. I was just with Red and Mebane a couple nights ago, and it was just like we picked up right where we left off. Our kids were talking, everybody was hanging out. It's just like we just had such a dynamic relationship because of like the culture that we came from and how much respect we have for each other. It's like every game we never really worried about like the stats or anything, because we always felt like we were already underdogs already. We had a team full of underdogs, so the notoriety didn't matter to us. But although notoriety came because we were chasing our goals, and that's what led to all those things. But at the same time, like that relationship to, you know, share everything with each other and actually feel that when your teammate got injured, it was like, wow, like I got to do it for him. And I think that's what was really interesting about that team.
Well, before we move forward, what was y'all fighting about again? Go back
Sacks,
to that.
quarterback sacks.
No, no.
No,
Mike,
fight against no sack.
what happened? What happened?
Cliff was sleepy in the morning. Like Cliff.
No, that wasn't even that game. Relax, that wasn't even that game. It was an Atlanta game. I remember this.
Cliff, you tell the story.
Yeah,
what
tell
happened?
the story.
What happened?
So we on the side, we're playing the Atlanta Falcons. This is the Super Bowl year. I think it's a combination of a few things that made us explode. One of them, let me tell the story and I'll tell you why it exploded. But we're it might have been a third down or something like that, and Mike comes off to the sideline like, I need you to do this, that, and the third, and starts hollering at me, and I'm like, pump your brakes, bro. Like, who are you talking to? Like I know how to get to the quarterback just as much as you know how to get to the quarterback.
Right.
So we go back and forth, and mind you, we're up like 30 points on Atlanta. So and they come to find out the cameras caught us. They're like, they're up 30 points. Why are they that? Like, why are they out there having a heated argument like this or whatever? So we're going back and forth to the point where they had to separate us.
Okay.
I gotta go sit on the offensive side. He's sitting over his side or whatever. Once I get mad at you, and I like, because it takes a lot to get mad for me to get mad. But once I get mad, it's a wrap. Like I ain't got nothing to say. Like we not friends.
Right.
And this guy, so we don't say nothing the rest of the game. And I'm on the bus. I'm still hot. You know what I'm saying? Mad. Like I wish he would say something to me type thing.
Okay.
Mind you, we just blew this team out.
Okay.
He walks onto the bus. He's always one of the last people to walk on the bus. He walks on the bus. He looks at me. He's like, now I got to go call my wife, tell her she can't be friends with your wife because you and I can't get along. And ever since then, we've been cool ever since. You know what I'm saying?
Best friends ever since.
Been best friends ever since. But, yeah, that and I think that was just a combination of both of us being frustrated with our situation at the time. Both of us coming from being starters in our respective teams. Both of us, kind of being that dude on the D-line or whatever. Yeah. And now we both coming off the bench. So now we both we mad at the situation that we're both in because we're looking at each other in the mirror. We're going through the same thing. So everything made us mad at that moment. But then, I've been my guy ever since.
Well, Cliff, I'm glad it doesn't take much to get you mad. So anyway, Doug, not saying that you and I don't go back and forth all the time, but tell us what's going on in June. There is a basketball game that is happening. Take us through that. What is happening? How can people come and watch? Who are the coaches going to be? Set us up for all of that.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's more than just the basketball game, but I'll start off with the basketball game.
Okay.
So, Cliff knows this. All of us had hoop dreams.
Yeah.
Right?
Still.
35 still years got old. Still got
hoop
Doug, are you good at basketball?
Damn straight I'm good at basketball. Could I ask somebody?
Do you just play good defense?
Wow. No. Anybody that says they play real good defense is not a real hooper. If that's the first thing you lead off with.
Right, but I do play good defense.
You do, but
can Doug play basketball, Mike B?
Uh-oh. He's there.
Mike B, is Doug a good basketball player?
Doug is a good basketball player, but I also think Doug hogs the ball.
Wow.
And that's the thing about it. But overall, I would say Doug is pretty good.
I don't play with Mike. Mike, what are you talking about? We don't play. I play with Cliff.
Well, I used to play with you.
Okay, that was
Forgot I used to live in
a
Seattle
long,
for 6
long
years.
time ago.
Yeah.
Joe, I'm just judging. You know, I feel like I don't think you would change. Tiger don't change.
A Tiger don't change his
I
stripes.
don't know if you change all of a sudden. Now you passing the ball and you getting your teammates into the game. James, so you just when I think of you, I think of Westbrook, but I think of you as
Wow.
Nah, I'm joking.
Wow.
Old Westbrook or new Westbrook?
I would say Bobby, Doug, and Cliff were the top 3 basketball players on the team. And Curse.
Well, Sydney was
Sydney
Mr.
got the dead by
Basketball in
now.
Carolina.
What did you say about Sid?
No, Sydney don't hoop anymore.
He said he's geriatric now.
All right, let's go to this basketball game.
Yeah.
Doug, take us through it.
Again, we've all had hoop dreams, right?
Okay.
So if we was gonna do anything, we are gonna do a basketball game.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's just all of us coming back together. This is kind of like an early Seahawks reunion. I'm not really gonna say that, but I'm gonna say that. But we're also inviting players and athletes from various sports and just around the area, right? We're gonna celebrate Seattle and Seattle sports in general. But we want to play a basketball game. The 2 coaches that we have locked in right now, am I allowed to say?
We say.
I just want to make sure.
No, Cliff already messed up. I already heard about that.
Yeah.
Cliff wasn't supposed to say something. I got the message right here.
She lied to you. She lied to you.
Wow.
Because I was under the impression that that's what was going down. Hence why Doug passed me the ball. Talking about, Cliff, go ahead and tell him. See how he's still throwing me under the bus. But go ahead. I'll let you go.
It's all on social media now who the coach is going to be.
Okay, so Marshawn's going to be a coach for one of the teams, and then Gary Payton's going to be the other coach.
Bay Area.
Okay. Yeah, so we're keeping it local and keeping it fresh and keeping it real.
Okay.
So that's going to be a lot of fun, and we got we're not supposed to announce anybody else, right?
Go ahead, Doug.
No. You ain't gonna throw me under the bus. That's it for now.
Okay. You don't want to break in it because y'all were supposed to break that on my show, but that didn't happen because the communication. That's another story in itself, though. But
it ain't about you, G.
It never is.
That's the problem.
As a matter of fact, I'm not even at the event because you guys scheduled the event
when you get married. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, but
how are we
congratulations.
supposed to know? We didn't get an invite to the marriage. How are we supposed to know if we'd have got an invite?
Y'all didn't check in with me.
If we would have got an invite, how are we supposed to
y'all
check in on you?
still treat me like the car wash man,
How are
Mike Bennett.
How are we supposed to get an invite?
They still treat me like the car wash man, Mike
That ain't
B.
true. That ain't
yes,
true.
Yes, it is.
No, it ain't. Because I call Adam on the side. What you talking about?
Okay, so is there anything else going on during that time? I know that there's a basketball game.
Yeah.
Is there something else going on?
Yeah, so we got the day of service, and there's more. There's gonna be more on that, but let's be real for a second, right? Like, this is gonna be a lot of sponsorship and a lot of I don't want to call it noise, but essentially that's what it is. It's a lot of amplification about us as teammates and what we're doing, and of course just our history. But
sure,
the truth of the matter is that we want to help these organizations that are on the ground floor doing the work.
Right.
That's what it's about,
right?
That's truly what it's about. And so we want to be able to get out and bring people with us to see what these organizations are doing. And so that's what the day of service is going to be. It's an opportunity for us to really display and highlight what these organizations are doing. And then we're going to have a is it gala? What do you call? How do you pronounce
both? Gala,
whatever.
You go gala. Yeah,
Depends on where you're from.
Yeah. But it's not going to be a traditional one, right? Like, again, this is it's about these organizations, right? We're going to have some fun at this event, but it's going to be an opportunity for us to connect, right? Especially after the pandemic. Like, let's get back together.
What's the date?
It's so that weekend, June 26th.
26th.
Yeah, it's going to be the basketball game. And then those events will happen prior to that, leading up to the game.
If I want to go to the game and I'm listening right now, where do I go? Do I go to Champions of Change?
Championsofchange.org. You go to the events page and you can buy tickets for all the stuff that's going on.
Yes, and we're trying to sell out the arena. Yes, we are at Climate Pledge. Mm-hmm. So, we definitely want to make sure that the city comes out and supports. But more so than anything, yes, all your favorite celeb athletes are going to be there. But
is Jay-Z still coming?
Breaking news.
No, he didn't make the list, Mike.
He didn't make the list.
Will Beyonce come there?
JB. You got to jump through hoops to get them. But all your favorite celebs going to be there. But more so than anything, the most important part about it is it is a charity event in a sense of we're supporting a lot of local, organizations from Odessa Brown Clinic, Dads, Women United, Dignity for Divas, Humble Design. So we are supporting the community with this event. It's going to be a great time. It's to bring families together, but it is also for a great cause.
And these organizations, I won't highlight each of them right now because just for the sake of time, but I will say this. They are doing some incredible work in the community, and they have a lot of data around the impact that they have, right? And so that's why I think these organizations just stood out to us for the initial set, because originally we were already connected to them, but we also know the impact that they're having in the community. And so being able to highlight that and then help them scale to do more of that, that's what this is about.
That's a great way for us to transition to this next topic. When you think about the history of social change in this country, we know how instrumental that former and current athletes have been over the years.
Yeah.
You go back and you look and see what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was doing, Muhammad Ali was doing, Jim Brown was doing, and we can go on and on. And for some reason, there was this feeling like in the 80s and 90s, it kind of slowed down, if you will. But I think here recently, especially over the last 10 years, it has picked back up. And so, Mike B., I'm going to start off with you. How important do you believe it is for current and or former athletes to be involved when it comes to social change in this country?
I think it's a big thing. I think at the end of the day, it's not so. I think sometimes in this world we get caught up with titles a lot, and it's like athlete, doctor, all these different titles that kind of break us from our humanity. And I think at the end of the day, social change and social justice and those initiatives are all tied into our humanity. So I think it's important as just being humans to connect to the suffering of others, and how do we, move the needle forward from the past. I think there's a lot of times the issues before we got so caught up in capitalism, and usually capitalism wins out at the end of the day because it's always about that. But I think in this state, over the last 10 years, like you said, there's been a lot of change. I think all that the change in sports in general, I feel like the women athletes have been the bigger carriers of this. Like you look at even before Colin Kaepernick, you look at the WNBA, those players, Maya and everybody, they were doing a lot of things that didn't have a lot of notoriety. But I think over this time, the athletes have made a bigger change. And I think it's just important as just being a human and finding a way to impact. And I think with the platform that we blessed with, the opportunities that we blessed with, how do we get back to the communities that we come from and how do we serve them? I think there's a lot of things that we need to do as in an internal fashion to, help everything that's happening to us. And I think athletes in general are just the people who have this platform. And I think that in those last 10 years, if you look at the biggest change, I think it's been social media and the access to people. And I think the access to people to see tragedy, to see beauty, to see all these things, but it's right here in our phone. You wonder, before George Floyd, there was a lot of situations that have happened like that. But with social media, it's like we were seeing it over and over and over and over again. And it reminded us how far away we've gotten from humanity and how far we've got away from ourselves. And I think, social media is a double-edged sword. Some ways it takes us back. In some ways it pushes us forward. I think being able to use these platforms in this way, to have these games, to talk about the things and the works that everybody's doing is just only going to propel everything.
Well, let's talk about something that's going on right now. I wanted to bring this up with you, Brian Flores. And I'm bringing this topic up because Brian Flores, as you guys know, he has a lawsuit pending against the NFL and some teams. He's suing the NFL for engaging, in his opinion, in discriminatory hiring practices against black candidates for coaching and also front office positions. Now, NFL ratings right now are higher than ever. There's more talk and discussion about an NFL trade than there is around an NBA basketball game. That's how big the NFL is right now. Mike B., you mentioned capitalism. This is something that Doug and we talk about this all the time. Doug brings up capitalism being a huge problem sometimes in this country. You guys, whatever one you want to pick, what can current and or former players do to even help out with this Brian Flores situation?
Go ahead.
I mean, that's a loaded question, G. It's
Well, is it okay? Let me just say. Let me say this: is it a loaded question because the truth is nothing can be done? Is that the truth? Is it too far gone? Is it too late? Because I don't right now. There's a lawsuit pending and all this stuff going, and it was in the news for a little while, social media. Now I think everybody's moved on. We're talking about trades. We're talking about all the acquisitions happening. We're talking about everything.
well. Let me just. I'll say one comment first, and then Cliff can take over. My perspective on this is that it's determined like where's the end point? Where do you make the decision, and how do you then argue that in the court of law or the court of public opinion? Right? Is Brian Flores a coach that's worthy of a head coaching job? How can you determine that? How can you say that, with hard, cold facts? You can't. It's an argument.
It's subjective.
It's subjective.
It is subjective.
But as a player and as somebody who I look at this in totality and thinking like, what's the surface level and then what's the depth of it? You can't tell me how many black head coaches are there in the NFL right now?
One right now.
One?
Right now.
Yeah. One.
No, two.
Who's
Two.
the other one?
Lovie Smith down in Houston.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
he got the
Okay.
job.
He got
Yeah.
the job. Yep.
But going back to my original point, you can't tell me that out of all of the players in the NFL and who have had success in the NFL and who have been leaders in the locker room and have been coaches on the field, you can't tell me out of all of those players that you only have two that have been selected as NFL coaches. From a subjective standpoint, right? Yeah, it's really hard to say that from a business standpoint that you can have some hard points to say left or right. But we know. You and I know.
Yep.
People know. And you're not hiding that from anybody. And whether it's an NFL organization thing or if it's an ownership thing or if it's a GM thing, nobody knows. But the truth of the matter is, from my standpoint, there is a problem. And we know there's a problem. And there has been a problem. You asking me what can current and former players do? We got to keep pushing the needle. We got to keep talking about it. And we got to keep holding people accountable.
To elaborate on that a little bit too, I think honestly, I feel like former players probably have a bigger impact on some of this stuff, possibly based on this, because we have to remember the NFL, as we all say, is a business, right? You talking about how you navigate. You've only been navigating for a year. I beg to differ. You've been navigating your whole career. You just didn't take it as a business. I think the problem is how the league is structured. And how they have it set up is it's a dog-eat-dog world.
Okay.
Right? Nothing is guaranteed, right? You're one play away from being hurt, out of the league. You're one play from your contract being over with, right? So with all these things for these young players that they're just one step away from being out of the league, it's hard for you to step up for anything because you're just worried about yourself.
Yep.
You're just concerned about me being here next year. Like you as a veteran player, the best day is that first kickoff of the season because your contract's guaranteed for that year. That's the best. Like every year I was here, I would look back at Mokele like, oh, I'm here for another year. You know what I'm saying? Like so coming off Pro Bowl years, coming off Super Bowl year, it doesn't matter. So if all these things are weighing on a 24-year-old, a 25-year-old, he's not processing. He can't understand this. Man, let me look out for this coach when I'm probably going to be out of here before the coach is going to be out of here.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So so the way it's constructed, and coaches have a stressful job themselves because they 1 year away from being out of the league.
But hold on. But let's not be fooled in thinking that all players are in that current situation, right? So like,
the majority,
90%,
right?
95%.
Quarterbacks, on the other hand,
are the only ones.
And there have been instances when we have taken a position on certain things, and we were like, hey, certain quarterbacks, we would like for you to say something. You have the most power in our realm.
Why won't they say anything?
I think too.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, cut me off before I get
cut you off.
canceled.
I just want to get my thoughts because y'all being long-winded, and I need to get my thought out before I lose it. I was gonna say, I think like in the end of the day, I think it was what James Baldwin was saying. Like people cry much easier than they can change. So I feel like the NFL cries a lot about change, and they beg and say all these things about change, but the change ain't never gonna come. because the change that we see fit, it has a lot to do with race and gender and equality. And I think it's a history of that will never ever change. The reason that Brian Flores has to say these things and express this, but nobody supports him, and it goes underneath the rug, right? Because at the end of the day, the NFL cries about the change, but that change that we see fit in America that we see and we want, that's never going to happen, because at the end of the day, it comes down to the bottom line. And it's always going to come down to, like you said, Doug, it is subjective. How do you judge if Brian Flores is a good coach or bad coach? That's not what we should be judging. We should be judging the business of the NFL and how they see fit and how they do it in the way that the manner that somebody that's an owner asks them to lose games. That's illegal. That should be illegal for an owner to ask the coach to lose games for a draft pick. Pete Rose can't even get in the Hall of Fame because he bet on the game. That's almost like betting and controlling the outcome of a team and everything. And because he has the courage to say that, we should be judging. That's the greatest merit of his characters, to be honest, regardless of the treachery around him. I think that's the thing about Brian Flores that makes him a great coach, is because regardless of the money, regardless of everything, he stay true to his character. And over in time, this history that is happening to Black coaches again and again has suffered from the crisis of this. And I look at it and I say, well, all the Black players, my grandma always talk about charity. Charity starts at home. And I think a lot of the Black players in the NFL are the main reason. And I feel this is why Black coaches have the biggest hardship, is because the Black players aren't stepping up for the coaches the way that they did for other things that are outside of the NFL. I think there's a lot of us are throwing rocks at a glass house, then we live in a glass house. And I think at the end of the day, the players, because a lot of the players are becoming coaches, and they're going to run into the same issue that Brian Flores ran into, Art Shell ran into, Lovie Smith ran into. Everybody's going to be saying, oh, why me? It's going to be because before the platform wasn't set in the right manner for us to be able to stand to. We should be marching on DC right now, demanding that the NFL changes is higher in practice, but we aren't, because we aren't in that position. And when we become in that position, then we're going to ask for people to help us. But it's going to be too late then, because we're just going to be part of a moment. We ain't going to be part of a movement.
So this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing, Mike, you're saying that you don't think that change is going to come, because you believe that current Black players need to be stepping up currently right now and need to be marching in Washington right now on this. And I hear you, Cliff, saying that 90% of players that are in the league currently are one play away from their contract being done. They're just worried about being able to make it themselves.
Average is less than 3.
Average career in the NFL is less than 3 years. So the majority. So what I hear from you is, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, that the NFL is designed, the machine is so powerful that no matter, even if you want change, it's hard for there to be real change. And the only way for change to really happen is if for the NFL to actually say one day, okay, we are going to be the ones to change it. Because I don't know if current players can change it, and I don't know how former players can change it, because you guys are outside of the league. Yeah. Doug, you got a smile on your face.
Yeah, I mean, because we can take this in a number of different directions. You can zoom out and take this outside the NFL, and we can talk about the SCOTUS confirmation right now with Judge Jackson, right? You have a system in place. Think about how many people who were appointed judges before Miss Jackson. Miss Jackson, she ain't been appointed yet, but think about all the people who've been appointed. Who are those people? What are their backgrounds? And let's be honest, what do they look like? Right? Mm-hmm. If you have a system that only has that perspective in it for so long, right? Look, I'm not saying it's by malicious intent. Some of it is, let's be honest, but some of it's not. It's not saying that it's by malicious intent. It's just that if you are in a bubble and you think a certain way and you're around certain people who think the same thing, you're only going to think those things. If you don't have a diversity of perspective that's then injected into that system, how is that system ever going to change? And if you don't have that diversity of system, you cannot expect that change to happen. I do believe change is inevitable. I do believe in life in general, change is inevitable.
Time changes things.
Yes. You have to apply direction to that change in order for it to be progress. And that direction is, how are we pushing this forward? What are the different avenues, the different perspectives, the different thoughts that are then refining this system to then push it towards progress. And I think that's part of what we're talking about here is that there's not a lot of diverse perspective in this system that was built. And sometimes when it gets to that point where it's a huge mammoth of a system, it has to be deconstructed. And, that's not a conversation many people want to have, whether it's our Supreme Court system and confirmation system, or if it's the head coaching hiring practices in the NFL.
Did you guys think this way when you played, Mike, Cliff,
Yeah,
Doug?
I would always think like that. It's just for example, like not to call Pete Carroll out, but I'm going to say this. Okay, so Pete Carroll gets on TV and says, "Oh, Colin Kaepernick needs an opportunity." And, and he's done all these things and said all these different things, but for him to take the opportunity to say, "Hey, Colin Kaepernick, you could be a backup quarterback or at least have a tryout to be on my team," that hasn't happened, right? But at the same time, on the other side, there's this thing of his heart that's saying, well, I'm part of this change. But then it's like, okay, if this change needs to be changed, you have the opportunity to give somebody, if there's a big narrative about social injustice, and here's a guy that done that, he's done this, well, give him the opportunity. But it's like there's no intent for that change to happen. And nobody wants to be the person or the system or the team to be like, oh, I took the time to do that. And I even think that that's what, even with the champions of change, that's kind of what we were thinking, like the idea of saying, like, how do we not think about this as one part of a system, as one part as an individual who's doing work over here, a person who's doing work over there, Cliff is doing that, and I'm doing that. Like, okay, how can we drop our ego for a particular moment in a particular movement to group our thoughts together to make the biggest impact we can in one day and bring more people together for that thing? Is because we're not thinking about it as individuals. Of course, having your own charity event, having everything the way that you want it, it's like, that's the way you want to do it. I want to have this cake, I want to have this, but then having the opportunity to compromise and collaborate is where I think we have our greatest growth as humanity. But I think we lack that so much because we lead with our ego instead of leading with our faith and our spirituality. And I think for us, that's where we're at right now. It comes back to us like, well, if there's a lot of things that need to be changed, well, let's be the example that we want, and I think that's what we're trying to accomplish with the Champions for Change and what we're seeing a lot in the NFL as far as like, yeah, we would love Brian Flores to be our coach, but not today. We want to pick another guy. Yeah, we want that change to happen with George Floyd, but we ain't going to support this. So it's just a lot of rhetoric that doesn't really have any girth to it. It doesn't really have no intestinal fortitude.
But the question that you was about to ask was, were we thinking like this in the league, right?
Yes.
When we played, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to bring it back full circle is like Champions of Change, I don't think it also is where you're at mentally, right? Where you're at from a maturity standpoint. You know what I mean? Like Champions of Change, I'm not sure what could have happened while we were playing.
No.
See what I'm saying? So it depends on where you're at in life in that moment. It depends on your maturity. It depends on what's going on in your life in those moments to be able to like, you know what, I'm going to put my ego aside and I'm going to come together with these guys and we're going to build something even bigger, understanding the impact of what togetherness means. Like, you don't understand it at 21 years old. You don't understand it at 25 years old. Coach Carroll used to have this thing all the time where he would, and it didn't make sense at the time, but it does to me now, like for a guy, I think it was 25 or 26 years old, like that's when like something in your brain clicks.
Your prefrontal cortex develops.
Something like that, right? So like, but like I do think there's something to that in a sense of it's really just growth. Like your experiences plays a role in how you move and how you process things. So like when we're talking about some of these things with the younger players, I find it unfair because I know at 21 I couldn't process that stuff. It didn't make any sense to me, right? So like it's unfair to think these 22-year-olds, these 23-year-olds, like they're not going to make mistakes. I think human beings have a bad habit of forgetting how they were in those moments at those age. We have a terrible habit of man, I don't know how those guys blow their money. He's 22 years old. You tell me who at 22 years old had a sense of financial literacy in America. You tell me who actually knew what to do with some of that money that they get. Like, you don't, because you haven't experienced anything. You went from being broke to having a couple of dollars and nobody even told you anything about taxes. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, but like, it's all a process. And I feel like as people, we don't allow each other to grow and understand that, yeah, you was 22 at that age. And when I was 22, I couldn't process things that way either.
Let me say this, as not many people here can say that they knew you guys win. And I'm a little older than you guys. And I got to tell you, hearing you say, Mike B, talking about putting the ego to the side, having this discussion with the three of you, it brings love to my heart because I can hear the way you guys talk now compared to where you did years ago.
Exactly.
I remember the discussions we had. And Doug, you're married. Cliff, you're married. Mike B, you're married. You guys got kids. The way you are talking, even your energy right now is different. And so,
but you know what? You know what,
that?
G? Not to cut you off, and I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But also, I think at the end of the day, we also didn't have the leadership now that I feel like the guys before is like the conversation that we had. I feel like a lot of the young guys are getting, like you said, it's been his last year of this bubble and this evolution of a lot of people. So having the opportunity to use the knowledge of the leadership now to indoctrinate the young players and give them opportunities to learn is something these conversations weren't happening back then. Yeah. I felt like when I was 21 and 22, there wasn't a lot of conversations about race and gender and politics in sports because there was no big movements going on. But now the kids are growing up in these movements and growing up in what's happening, and they're coming up with their own voices.
And they also see the relevance of it, right? Like you can't hide behind it anymore. And to be honest, to a lot of these corporate sponsors, right, your surface level ain't hiding anymore either, right? Like these kids they're getting hip to it. Now that there's a whole bunch that comes with that, but I think the younger generation is seeing like, are you real or are you just surface level? You just being fake? Are you just doing this to cover your backside for the PR side of it? You know, it's changing. It's changing. And to Mike's point, we weren't having these conversations in the locker room when we were 21, 22 years old. We weren't having this in high school. We weren't, this. And the style of how you get to the NFL or get to you playing your sport, it's totally different than when we grew up. Like we grew up smashing heads in Little League. Yeah. It's totally different now. And I think just that progression, we don't know what's coming from it, right? But as long as we are engaged and we are being thoughtful, especially as a trio now, and we're married now, we have kids, we see the world from a different perspective, right? Like I'm seeing things that my dad did and my mom did growing up, and now I'm looking at it from the lens of a father, and I'm like, that's why they did that.
Makes sense.
Right.
And even some of the mistakes that they made, I'm like, I'm not as mad at them now because I see that they were trying.
Absolutely.
And so having that different perspective, it makes a big difference. And to Cliff's point, like we weren't thinking about this in 22 years old.
So we could stay on this topic forever, and hopefully the champions of change, the three of you, will do this again with me because I feel like there's so much other things to go into, and I really want to do this again. But I want to get into why the three of you mean so much to this town, why you three and the era that you guys had was such an amazing era, and it was more than just the wins and losses. It was more than the Super Bowl. There was something about it. It was the connection.
It's culture.
It's the culture. We'll get to that in a second because I'm going to tell you something
that
Doug and I argue with all the time. And I'm going to bring this up. Watch this. So just recently, Mike B and Cliff, Russell Wilson was traded and Bobby Wagner was released, officially making the end of an era. That was you guys' former teammates. There's nobody left from that team that is currently on the Seahawks team. One of the things that Doug and I talk about all the time is this. We ask what came first. Can I share this with him?
Yeah.
Mike, Doug and I disagree. Cliff, Doug and I disagree. I tell him that the culture came first. Mm-hmm. Pete Carroll established the culture. Mm-hmm. And Doug says the players made the culture. That's where we disagree. Let me repeat that again. I say that Pete Carroll brought the culture, made the culture. Yep. And then when you guys came in, you guys added to that recipe, that formula. And Doug says,
"Oh, I don't know.
Hold on. And then you get to speak." Doug says, "No, G. We, the players, are the ones that made that culture." Mike, go ahead. Who's right? Who's wrong?
I don't think there's neither a right or wrong in this situation.
Hold on, Mike.
There we go.
Hold on, Mike. Before you answer the question, let me make sure I give the proper context to this.
Please, Doug, because he got you all context out.
You know how GB sometimes.
Wow.
I say this. What Pete did.
You giving him credit to start? Love it.
This is the same conversation we've had, G.
Go ahead.
Pete allowed us to be us,
Okay.
right? That's what we brought. You know, Sherm was on the edge of that from the very beginning. From the very beginning, pushing the boundaries, right? But we were all in that same mindset. But Pete allowed us to do that, and we had players that were lower round draft picks, forgotten from their teams, that came in and said, "No, we're gonna create this our own culture, and it's gonna be a winning culture, and we're gonna be a family in the process." And I think that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike. I'm gonna go next.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh.
You wait. When Cliff say I want to
Yeah,
go
Cliff-
next. Cliff.
Yeah. Hey, but to my point,
Yes.
it's the three of us bringing different perspectives to the table, and that's why we're gonna kill it.
That's why you need diversity. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, in general, like, no person comes into possession of a culture without having to pay a heavy price for it. And I think the players, we came into a culture, but we paid a heavy price for that culture that we came into. I think we came in there and there was a culture that was kind of set, but there's the players who carried the burden and the workload to, you know, create that culture and the longevity of it. The culture that Pete Carroll created is a culture of words. I think the culture that we created with each other was a cultural bond that we connected. And that cultural bond is a thing that you see that doesn't exist anymore. The identity and the ideology that Pete has, he's been putting that ideology continuing into the program. But the dividends that it paid before was because there was a bond with the players that was beyond what the culture of just talking. It was something that was beyond that. And I think, you know, like, and so to both of you, I think Pete plays a role into it, and I think the players play a role into it. But a coach isn't as good as he's only as good as his players. You know, if you start losing players, you start losing the techniques, you start losing all those things. You try to recreate a Doug Baldwin. This guy has the same attributes as a Doug Baldwin, but he doesn't have the heart of a Doug Baldwin. This guy has the same attributes as a Cliff Avril, but he doesn't have the intellect of a Cliff Avril. This guy looks like Richard Sherman, that he doesn't have the wit of Richard Sherman. Or this guy, he hits like Cam Chancellor, but he doesn't have the tenacity of Cam Chancellor. So you could try to recreate all of that, but that's the culture, those things that are instilled in players that you cannot find. And that's what we had. And you think you can go out and find that, but you can't replace those type of things because those are internal intangibles that can never be replaced.
Man, you just said everything I needed to say. But to add on to that, though, I think, again, neither one of y'all are wrong in the sense of it's still Pete's philosophy, because he's been teaching that since his SC days, right? So the culture or the philosophy or the foundation of what built that nice behind house, I will say that definitely starts with Coach Carroll. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what has had him, that's what given him so much success even in college. And then, you know, the early on years, or heck, this whole run really, right, is that foundation. Now, the type of wood and the type of material and type of stuff that you use on that foundation, we were cut different from that perspective. Like we weren't these wood brick house, like we were stone, like these stone homes that you build in Europe, like them homes that's gonna stand for 150 years, not these homes that's gonna stand for 25. Like as a comparison, like I feel like that's what the case was. Coach Carroll had a foundation of something that he believed, like Doug said, he allowed us to be ourselves, because that's not a normal thing in the NFL. Coaches want to mold you to be a certain way. No, he allowed us to be. But the thing is, in letting us be ourselves, everyone, and what allowed us to have success is everyone had respect for one another.
Yep.
That's not normal, because there's a lot of ego in that building. There's a lot of guys that just feel like, I don't need you next to me. Like, it could easily go that way.
Right.
But we took the approach of, I need Mike B to be out there with me, because I know one of us going to get this double team, the other person's going to win.
Yep.
Like, I understood that.
Right.
He understood that. We understood that. So the foundation of what Coach Carroll did was amazing.
Right.
But the type of players that he had in that foundation is also what allowed us to have so much success for so long.
Can you guys take me into practice? How hard was practice?
Depends on who you ask. Ain't that right, Mike B?
I'll say
Because you guys told me, from what I've heard over the years,
you was gonna come compete. If you were practicing, you were going to compete. And if you weren't practicing, shut up.
Facts. That's just what it was.
That's what it was. And it didn't matter where you came from.
That was also Coach Carroll's thing, because that's not a thing in the NFL.
Okay,
Right.
Is that Coach Carroll's thing?
But I'll say this, though. That yes, again, Coach Carroll, I agree with Cliff. Coach Carroll laid the foundation, right?
Yeah.
But when you have the wide receivers and the DBs going at each other's throats to the point where we're getting fined and getting threatened to lose draft picks because we fighting in practice. And it wasn't because we didn't like each other. We loved each other.
But we like to compete.
And it didn't matter if you was a first-round draft pick or undrafted guy. You was going to come in here, you was going to have an opportunity to compete. But if you came in here because you was a high draft pick and you thought you was just going to mosey on in here because you were a high draft pick, you weren't going to last very long.
But that's the accountability piece, too.
So where do we – go ahead.
Coach KIRO, I think Coach KIRO was really good at that. Like you're a draft pick, it didn't really matter. You had to come in and compete.
You got an opportunity
on other
to compete.
Teams, a lot of teams in the NFL, that's not the case. A lot of teams, guys come in, they get put into place, and they not ready. They out there, and they just not ready. And people get mad at the player. I'm like, but you put a guy that just last year was in college in the defensive line in the NFL. No, you know what I mean? So, like, Coach KIRO did a good job of having people compete. And when they were ready, they were ready. And you don't see that very often.
So, okay, so ask your question, then I want to bring this back to Champions of Change a little bit.
Well, my question is this, and I know you're going to get to the Champions of Change. My question is this, and I think this is what every Seahawk fan, every 12, yes, we realize that was a special time. Yes, we realize that that Cliff, Doug.
Can you get back there, G?
Might be.
Know, G.
Oh, you know where? Okay, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
Wait. Okay. Hold on. Yes, everybody wants to get back there. How do you find these players? How do you get back there?
See that bottle you had right there?
Yes.
They caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what it was. Like, there's no – like, think about this, G. Think about this. Not one time in NFL history have you ever been able to get – and this is not to toot my horn or might be – like, the top 2 defensive linemen all in the same year in free agency. Back-to-back days. Like, not one time. Like, if you was watching it, you was like, oh, Cliff Avril, Michael Bennett, top 2 free agents right now as D linemen. And you're able to get both of them? Like, the market was what it was. We had to do what we had to do. But, like, the odds of something like that happening, I don't know. The odds of you finding a Doug Baldwin undrafted, I don't know. Maybe once.
Jermaine Kearse?
But then go get Jermaine. Oh, you got Richard Sherman. Oh, you got Cam Chancellor. All these guys in the late round. Russell Wilson, a 3rd-round draft pick who becomes a friend. Like, Michael Bennett. All these guys. Like, that doesn't happen.
And then not just the guys who were free agents or undrafted or low draft picks, but you got a guy like Earl Thomas who was a 1st-round draft pick who wanted to compete. Who wanted to compete every day. Me and Earl had battles every day.
Was Earl different?
Earl still
all different. I think all of us were different.
Earl was special out there. Special on that field.
Let me bring this back to why we're here, right? So the one thing that that I think we can all recognize and agree with is that when, as a team, again, it didn't matter if you were a 1st-round draft pick or undrafted, you had an opportunity to compete. And we set that standard. I think we really did. As players, we set that standard. It didn't matter if you were – it didn't matter where you came from. You had to come in here and compete, right? And now with Champions of Change, it's that same culture that we're able to bring to a philanthropic lens out into our community. It doesn't matter if you are a major organization or a small organization. You have an opportunity to compete. You have an opportunity to demonstrate the impact that you have in the community. This dad's organization,
yes,
Marvin and Jeanette Shaw, I love them. As human beings, I love them. But their program has data backed behind it, the impact that they had in people's lives. They're not a major organization. You may not have heard of them, but their impact is great. And so now we're able to put a spotlight on them and show what they're capable of doing. That's what we were about in football with the Seahawks. You had guys who they weren't the top names. You had a Richard Sherman who went in the 5th round and is now going to be a Hall of Famer and still has the mindset to compete at whatever he wants to do after he's done. Mm-hmm. That doesn't change. And so when you ask me how do we get to answer your other question, how do we get back there? You can't go back. You can't go back. You can try to replicate it. You can try to learn your lessons from that era, but you can't go back. You're talking about human beings who have gone through a lifetime of trauma and childhood trauma that has made them and molded them to who they are today, right? That you don't replicate that, and honestly, you don't want to replicate that, right? You want to learn from your mistakes, grow, and then make it better. And so I would tell you, let's not go back. Let's do it better than we've done it before. And I think that the organization has always spoke about that, right? stronger, faster, whatever it is. Like, okay, move forward.
It's hard to
Progress.
mimic something like that. That's why I said lightning in a bottle.
Well, I love this discussion. I could do this for another 3 hours, but I'm not going to do that. Champions of Change. That is something that the three of you guys doing this together. I love, Doug, what you're saying about this, how the approach that you guys took at practice, the approach that you guys took to being those top free agents on the board, Cliff and Mike B, the approach you took to the game of being undrafted, Doug, made you guys, like you said, lightning in a bottle. And I hope that the three of you guys with this organization, along with the other amazing organizations that you guys are going to partner with, the amazing organizations that maybe we haven't heard of. Maybe some of these organizations are undrafted. Maybe some of these organizations are free agents. Maybe some of these organizations are in the late rounds. Maybe some of these organizations are first rounders like Earl Thomas. But at the end of the day is you guys are going to bring that same approach that you guys, when you were amazing on the field, and you're going to bring that to the community. And I got to say this. I want to see you guys work at this just like you did on the field. The one thing that I saw out of you is being a car wash guy and being associated with the Seahawks for now 19 years. The one thing that stood out to me, the one thing that I learned, and by the way, I just want to take this time to say thank you guys because I'm where I'm at today because of you, right? Like you guys did so much to help me. Mike B, you let me do your events. Cliff, you let me do your events. Doug, you've done so many interviews with me when I was first starting out in this game. You guys really did a lot for me. But the one thing that stood out to me, and when people ask me what was so special about you guys, what was so special is you guys were never late. You were never late for work, right? You guys worked hard every single day. Your discussions and what you talked about, Mike B made the comment like, we can't talk about what we talked about in Mo Kelly's office. Well, the truth is the majority of what you guys talked about in Mo Kelly's office was, this is a podcast, so I can say it, was whooping ass on the field. That's really what y'all talked about all the time. Y'all talked about whooping ass way more than what's going on at the club or we're going to fly to Vegas or what trip you going to take next. Y'all really was talking about whooping ass on the field. So the same way you guys did that, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with Champions of Change. And I hope that this isn't the last time we discuss because I want to do more of this, and I want to call it What Came First. I got some ideas about that. So I appreciate it. Mike B, thank you. By the way, Mike B, I saw the pictures of you and Red and Mebane. And what is going on? Why is Red Brian so skinny, and why is Mebane so skinny?
They on Weight Watchers. I saw it. They on Weight Watchers out there.
They got them kids. They trying to be around. They want to lose some of that weight.
Hey, shout out to Red and Mebane.
All I know is that we went out to eat, and Red ate the most food I ever seen a human being eat. So I'm like, I don't know how he's losing this much weight. I was like, you getting an entree? Octopus? Yeah, he changed. He's eating octopus and stuff.
Big Red, old country stuff eating octopus now. Oh my goodness.
I appreciate it, and thanks a lot for coming through.
Man,
and good luck. Have fun at the basketball game. That's going to be fun.
Shout out that website one more time.
Championsofchange.org.
Let's go.
Yeah, y'all on Twitter. I saw it. Yeah, find them on Twitter. You don't know what it is right off top, but
it's at Champions of Change.
There you go.
Seattle.
Follow Doug on
Seattle.
Twitter. Follow Mike B. Mike B, are you even on Twitter still? Or are you still Moses Bread?
Oh, Bread.
Moses Bread. It should have been Beard, but you know.
I posted something.
Yeah, he don't know what he's talking about.
Okay.
All right.
But yeah, no, social media at Cliff Avril. Hey, we are here to serve the community. Let's never forget that piece. We're very blessed, very fortunate to have played in front of some great fans, and now it's our chance to be able to give back even more.
Yep.
Doug, we do this again. We're gonna call it What Came First?
I'll think about it.
Appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir.